All right, folks. I want you to thank Varldin I want to thank Varldin because they were actually a last-minute substitution for another run that we had to replace, and they very graciously did this at the last minute. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to them. They're going to be playing Steven Universe: Save the Light.
Alright, hello everyone. So this is Steven Universe: Save the Light. Most popularly known as a TV show. It does have like a couple of other things, like mobile games and a comic book, but everyone probably knows it for the show. And this is a pretty cool game. Looking forward to running it. And this is the category All Bosses. So let's just get right in on it. Timing will begin as soon as I hit new game here. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're off. So the beginning here is pretty linear. About the first 5 or so minutes, you just kind of have to go where the game directs you to. Kind of tells you a little bit about the game and the mechanics. So the first thing we have to do is grab that cheeseburger backpack up there. A neat little thing they took from the show to basically give you an inventory. So you can have various items like healing items, items that give you effects in combat, items that will revive people if they fall in combat. You know, pretty typical stuff that you would expect out of a sort of RPG kind of game. So here I'm controlling Steven. Now, Steven happens to be the slowest person that you can have in your party, and unfortunately I can't switch to Connie just yet. There's a couple of things where Steven is a little bit faster because he can roll when out of combat. So there are places such as here where you can dig things up out of the ground by using his special ability. That's something that only Steven can do. He can also roll into sort of like little hidden areas. That's another thing that only Steven can do. Occasionally, his rolling ability, depending on the angle and like little things like that, rolling on top of Lars's head, is a little bit faster. So on occasion, I will be switching over to Steven, but otherwise I'll be controlling other characters just because outside of combat, they happen to move faster. Now, you don't really need to know anything about the prequel to this game. Basically, that prism there used to be an enemy. In typical kids cartoon fashion, we made the enemy into our friend. And now someone has come along, and they're not our friend. It's a mysterious gem from outer space. Her name is Redacted. Because you don't know her name yet, I do though. And I'm not going to spoil it for you. So she's gonna come, do a little monologue, talking about how she used to be here on Earth, the prism used to belong to her. And Steven, we don't like that, so we're gonna basically say no here. Now, a couple of times, dialogue will appear and you have different options. Either I'm gonna pick the option where the following dialogue and thus the speech boxes, there's less of them, so it's faster. Or I pick something because it gives a character experience. Now that's what I did previously with Steven and Connie. One thing you may have noticed is a little bar in the top right that got filled. When two characters have their bar filled like that, they can perform a team attack. And team attacks are quite crucial to the speedruns. Now here's a little tutorial that basically explains you press this button to attack this character, you can attack this character. Different abilities that you have. And this is a neat little glitch here where if you don't press A, your star bar at the bottom left, which is what powers your abilities, it will keep refilling, but the enemies aren't attacking me. So doing this is actually about 10 or so seconds faster than simply plowing through the tutorial. So it's a neat little time save. this is also the part where I will like check my phone or something for like 10 or so seconds I have downtime. Now, to build up their relationship bar, or harmonize them, there's like a couple of different ways you can refer to it. So the dialogue options, like I mentioned, that is one thing. Another way is stuff like this, such as Steven healing, or later on Connie can defend people and it'll raise their bar up a little bit. And finally, if an enemy is attacking one character and another character deals a killing blow, then the character that deals the kill, then like the two of them will build up their relationship. And this is pretty crucial because by the time I get to the first boss, I want Steven and Connie here to have their bar filled up. So all of these fights that happen here in Beach City, which is probably going to be going on for about another 8 or so minutes, I'm trying to end these fights as quick as I can, but I'm also trying to read them and basically defeat the enemies while also making sure I'm doing what I can for them to get those kudos options. Now, finally, the last thing that you can do is, and these are completely random, sometimes when you deal a perfect block, which is when it appears purple underneath your character, another character can give them kudos. It's basically like a thumbs up, like, hey, good job, and their bar will fill up a little bit. Those happen completely at random though, so they're not really, consistent in any way. And that is one of the RNG factors of this game. As are that, sometimes when enemies get defeated, they will randomly drop stars. And they can be like anywhere between 1 and 4. And there we go, we got a kudos right there. Now, the enemies here in the beginning, they don't drop the 4s. Those are reserved for stronger enemies near the end of the game. Which, unfortunately, we won't actually see in this run. All bosses skips a lot of fights and uses other means to level up your characters. And yeah, I see it mentioned Mario RPG. I've heard people compare it to that. I also feel like this game is similar to the first 2 Paper Mario games. The way the characters work, they have abilities to do out of combat. You can equip badges later on. And so here is when you're first able to switch characters. So I'm able to switch over to Connie. Connie happens to be the second fastest character. She's tied with Pearl, although Pearl we don't use in the speedrun really, except when we're forced to later on. So for the majority of the run, Connie is going to be the one leading our party ahead. And as I mentioned, move over to Steven there, just because the rolling there will save a little more time than just having Connie run around. An item I use for basically all the fights here in Beach City are the star fruits. The yellow ones there give you 3 star points. Later on, we'll run into some green ones, and those fill you up 6. And those especially become useful later on during the boss fights. Threat in this game also is not really consistent. Sometimes you'll have Connie and Steven wailing on these guys, and then they'll just go and attack Greg. Greg's the guy with the guitar there, if you don't know. Happens to be Steven's dad. So, at least his dad's not letting him go off and fight aliens and save the world on his own. He's coming along for it. See, this guy here was going for Connie, so by attacking him with Steven, it builds up their bar a little bit. I unfortunately will not be able to kill that guy with Steven, so he's going to get one more hit in. With any luck, maybe we'll get a kudos. Oh, and we do. Now this one should still be locked onto Connie, so I'm going to try to kill him with Steven. And he wasn't. Again, like I said, threat in this game, it kind of doesn't make sense. I spent a long time trying to figure it out, and I cannot for the life of me figure it out. And now we got our first level up, so the game teaches you how to do that. First thing we're going to do is put those into attack. The game tells you about cookie cats at this point. And we're going to head on over here. Now here we get to see what Greg does. Didn't use him before because it wouldn't be faster, but now Greg is fast. So the first thing I'm going to do is knock this guy over closer to Greg, and then Greg is going to rock out. The first ability that he gets is a damaging aura. Neat thing too, if you can listen and hear the battle music, you can actually hear that a guitar has been added to the track. And that happens for every unique battle music that exists in this game, which I think is really cool. Later on, Steven gets to play a ukulele, and the same thing happens there. A ukulele gets added to the tracks, and it just gets added really seamlessly. Which, considering how important music is to the show, like there's lots of songs and stuff like that, it's like a really cool detail they put in, and I'm glad that they did. Now let's let Greg go ahead and get the kill on that one. Might be a little slower, but we get to hear him jam out for a little bit longer. And yeah, this show is like really fantastic. It does cover a number of serious topics, but it also has plenty of, you know, childish charm to it and episodes that are more akin to child cartoons. Definitely a little more serious than things I was used to as a kid, like Courage the Cowardly Dog. Don't really get any philosophical lessons out of that. You just get creeped out by barbers and cats. So again, I use Steven's dash there to move the enemies over to more favorable areas. In this scenario, moving them closer to Greg, so they do a little more. He does a little more damage to them. And since it's already synced up, the fastest way to kill him at this point is to do this. If they weren't synced up yet, I would probably wait a little bit to see who they would go and attack. It would lose a little bit of time, but if they're not synced up before I get to the next area, I would have to take a little bit of time loss there, just filling up Connie and Steven a little bit more. Because, as I said, their team attack is crucial to the first boss. And that key spawns after you do 3 fights in Beach City. There are other fights you can go do, but those are the fastest and also the most. And conveniently, they're also like basically in a path that would take you right back to Miradui. So I mentioned Paper Mario and badges earlier, so we just got our first badge. I'm gonna go toss that, and Steven gives him a little bit of a health increase. In all bosses, there are a couple of badges we use. There's only 3 really that we use. Other categories utilize more since they do more, they have more fights. But they are still needed. So here you can choose which of the gems you see in Beach City fighting off some of these monsters. We choose Garnet because of the 3 crystal gems, Garnet is the most valuable. The team attack that Garnet and Connie perform does the most damage, and it's kind of broken. Also, there I did a little menu glitch. If you open up the menu during some cutscenes, characters are able to do their out-of-combat ability, and since Stevens is rolling, it means that there are some areas where you're able to actually roll and move, whereas otherwise you wouldn't be able to. And sometimes you can actually just move freely in cutscenes, which is also something we do later on. Another reason that Garnet is pretty important is that one of her attacks is Shield Breaker, and that actually reduces the enemy's defense. It's a defense debuff. And that seriously helps during the boss fights in order to help defeat these bosses quicker with the exploitation between Garnet and Connie's team attack. Which I think I'll save off for our boss where we actually do that first, instead of just explaining it. It's a lot cooler to see. So here I put that sweatband onto Garnet. It increases her attack, letting her defeat these enemies all in one hit. Having Connie defend Garnet there helps build up their relationship bar a little bit. Not only the first time that she does it, but also subsequently. Every single time that she strikes an enemy that attacks them, it builds them up. And we're going to get that filled in the fight coming up here in Beach City Woods, once we head that way. And here I'm picking the rightmost option because it gives Garnet experience.
Let's go.
Coincidentally, it also has the least amount of dialogue. If you pick something else, basically, Garnet is disappointed in you and like yells at you, and it's like 3 extra text boxes. So for all intents and purposes, you want to pick that one. And say goodbye to Beach City.
We're just like the heroes in your
We'll be coming back here later on at the end of the game. And now we're in the woods. So I'm gonna roll here, grab a star fruit that's hanging up there in the tree, grab a couple of bits. So, like Beach City, I want to end these fights as quickly as possible, but I also want Connie and Garnet to be synchronized. Because, believe it or not, this is actually the last intended fight that I get into. Sans bosses. And I do mean without bosses, not sans Undertale. He is not in this game. And whether that is fortunate or unfortunate, I will leave that up for interpretation. So the RNG here basically is if they go for Connie and Garnet, and also if I get any of those kudos options. And there we go. Looks like I'll probably be able to kill this guy here, and that should get them synced up. It does, which is good. So now I just gotta end this fight as quick as possible, and we can move on. And just one punch from Garnet should do it. There we go. Just like One Punch Man. Except it takes 8 punches. Now we're going to collect this light dew here, which is entirely irrelevant for all bosses. Because we get to perform a neat trick here that not only gets us the key early to get through that gate that I just ran past, but there are also 2 fights that we get to skip that otherwise we would have to do if we needed those light dews. And what those dews do are they make these little trees appear. They grow, and you use those to get to other areas. Here we're going to grab a shield schematic. Every character has 2 schematics to upgrade their weapons. They're not actually needed in all bosses, but later on we can't progress unless we have one character get their... At least one character gets one of their upgrades. And it just so happens that Steven's is the fastest one to get. And now I might be able to get this... There we go, I got it. Sometimes you're able to get this door to open up while this dialogue is going, which saves a little bit of time. Switch partners really quick here, and it makes this cutscene happen instantly instead of all of them running up there. And then that is it for Familiar Grounds. And now we're moving on to Waterfall Way. So from here into the boss fight, it's basically going to be some movement. We're also going to see what Gray does out of battle. You may be shocked to learn that you play the guitar. That also does damage enemies if they happen to get hit in that little red aura that appears. So out of battle, what Greg is intended to do is you come across these puzzles that have arrows and you're supposed to play them. Now here they're pretty easy. It's in Waterfall Way and also the rest of Beach City Woods. They're just kind of there and you play them. Later on there are puzzles you have to do in order to uncover like a hidden arrow, or one of the arrows might not actually work, so you're not supposed to play them. But you don't do any of those in all bosses. Only 101% has to do the other Greg puzzles. So for now, we gotta put Greg away because Amethyst is going to be joining us. Now, we don't actually have to use Amethyst, but it's just faster because the game forces you to switch someone out for Amethyst. It's just faster doing that than switching back and getting Greg. There's no reason to do that. So cut that open for that sweatband and grabbing this Light Steven. So these Light Stevens, what they do is they give you some experience, and roughly you get about as much experience as you would get for a battle at your current level, which is really neat. And thanks to the placement of the Light Stevens, there's one in every area. So thanks to the location of those, we're able to skip having to do fights. Because we don't need the experience that you otherwise would need in order to get them up, either for abilities that we need, or just to have their stats raised.
Can you believe we're here?
And so here we are in South Trail. There's another log here that we have to go through with Steven. Now I opened up the menu here because I can actually now control Steven, and I can move kind of freely in this cutscene. It's one of those areas where that can happen. And also, if you move quickly enough, Steven would have another text, like a couple of other text boxes that appear when you roll back. But when you go through fast enough, it skips it. So we have another key door to open up. Speedrunner note, I'm hoping that someday we find a way to skip these doors. For one, it would make any percent faster, and especially for any percent, that's pretty much the one major time save that is conceivable, is a way to skip at least one of those doors. So there we grabbed the green star fruit that was laying there, very convenient. And it's what's going to help me one-shot the boss coming up. So now we jump down here, avoid some of the enemies. They're not too difficult to avoid. Later on, we're going to see some of the enemies that are a pain to avoid, but the ones here in Beach City, pretty simple. You really only get hit by them if you're not paying attention. So we open up the menu here. Lets us skip a small door opening cutscene. Because, you know, who needs doors? We can just run on through them.
Here we are.
So we have a couple of items to grab in here. And, whoa, who is that?
Hessonite?
And there you go. Now I can finally say her name. Her name is Hessonite.
Kenneth. Was it? No, what? Let me.
So she is here, basically recharging the prism, getting it back some of its power. And using it, she's going to summon our first boss. Now, one of the cool things about this boss is you can give it a variety of names. And here they are. We typically refer to this boss as Dave. Because of all those options, does anything really beat Dave? And now, let's check out what Steven and Connie's team attack is. If you know the show, you'll probably not be surprised by this, but their team attack is they fuse into Stevani. And so we're going to fuse into Stevani, we're going to put on an attack band, and we're going to attack. Now, interesting to note, that's not really a mash so much as it is a certain rhythm. If you just mash, you won't get as many attacks out of that. Now, looks like we're doing good. Now we use that star food that we got. So that takes 5 to use every time. and 3 Cycle Dave. Very, very rarely I get a 4 Cycle. Basically, in order to 4 Cycle, you would just have to be mashing badly or not get like any lucky hits. And so we had Amethyst join our party. You might recognize that spear. It's from our last crystal gem, Pearl. She comes in and steals your kill. Not very cool. Luckily, we still get the experience for it, though.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Now, since this game is programmed so greatly, I can actually move and jump during this cutscene, so try to get a little bit closer to the end here. I want to switch over to Steven. So I want to get up here, grab it Together Forever Breakfast, grabbing a level up charm. So the level up charms are something in addition to the light Stevens that we use for experience to avoid having to do just random fights for experience. That Together Forever Breakfast heals everyone up completely. So now we're at Bismuth's Forge. Gonna have to switch over to Garnet here. Garnet's extremely complicated ability is she punches things, and they break. It's simple, yet effective. Now we're gonna come down here to this section of the forge, because we got another block we need Garnet to break. Open up this chest, break open this vein here. It has chroma in it. So chroma is what you use to upgrade the abilities. So in order to upgrade Steven's shield, we need a couple of those violet chromas. And conveniently here in the forge, there's some blue chroma. So we're gonna hop over here and grab that real quick. Come over to the anvil and upgrade his shield schematic. Now, like I said, the only reason we really do this is because we can't get to the Great North without it, which is the next area. Otherwise, all his shield does is whenever Steven performs a perfect block, he regenerates a little bit of health, like a little like regen pops up. Now, sometimes the game soft locks there. This game has a lot of cool glitches, but some of them are not cool.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, I also do believe that bismuth like melts in water or something like that. But yeah, it is pretty ironic that a bismuth in real life is like pretty brittle and frail, yet in Steven Universe, they're like the builders of the gem race. Now I came back here because I'm going to perform something called the Forge Skip. We just have to take a look here real quick, see when Connie is going to be caught in the wall. There we go. Now, it's pretty amazing how much of a sequence break this is compared to how easy it is to perform. But what we're going to do is run up here, and we're now going to enter what is the second to last part of the game, which is deep in Bismuth's Forge. The Forge actually has a whole bunch of areas that you run through, kind of like Beach City Woods.
Yeah, I'm over it.
Now, all the game's flags seem to care for is that you run out back to the main area through this entrance. And it triggers this cutscene.
Oh no!
Now, again, huge surprise, but the final enemy in this game is, in fact, Hessonite. So, as if we went through the entire game, Hessonite is now going back to her warship, and this is going to set a flag on Lion back in Beach City that says, hey, teleport Steven and the gang up to Hess Knight's warship. Coincidentally, what this game also does with the quest flags is it doesn't actually care that there's multiple ones up. So I have a mission to go visit Lion in Beach City, but the one for the Great North is also active as well. So you can go through the rest of the game like normal, and the entire time Lion is still going to be set to send you off to Hess Knight's warship. Essentially what this means for the speedrun is you do the forward skip in the beginning there instead of doing it near the end of the game, and it saves us from doing one additional load time, one loading zone, in addition to the time it would take to run and perform the trick again. So time-wise, it's maybe not as impressive as any percent, because any percent I would have skipped that first boss as well, using that Steven roll ability. And also, yeah, so any percent right there would go to Hess Knight's warship. And that is why any percent is only 30 minutes and, you know, give or take a minute or two, depending on how well you play, whereas all bosses, you're going for more for like an hour and a half. And here we're getting contacted by Peridot. Peridot is playing an RPG herself, and will be checking on us periodically to give us updates. Now I'm going to be going in here, grabbing a Rose's Tear. That is one of the things that revives your fallen comrades in battle. Grab some Fire Assault Bits. They're very similar to the attack band. They increase a character's attack. And yeah, so this is Chili River, which, very appropriate name because there's really not any danger of getting into any fights. Disclaimer, all bosses and glitchless. Because 101%, where we have to go and grab the Light Steven, it's a very chaotic area that is pretty difficult to not get hit and do fast, and you'll probably get hit anyway. I hate it. It's probably one of my least favorite parts of 101%. So just a little bit of movement here. There's going to be some enemies coming up over here. Just jump over that guy, he won't hit you. Keep running for him to run away. And there's another level up charm conveniently right there. And that is Chili River.
I'm so proud of us.
Now coming up here is a pretty cool out of bounds that I think it's been about a month since it's been known. There are a couple of places you can get out of bounds. They're either not useful in a speedrun, or they're just like, you can't really do anything with them. The game is also designed that it wants to take forever to load on me. Come on, Steven, we're in a marathon. I'm gonna give it like 10 more seconds, and I might have to quit out of the game. Ah, yeah, it looks like it's doing it to me. So I'm going to quit out of the game and open it back up. The game does autosave, so it's going to bring me right back. So it's not that terrible. Something that's kind of funny is the game never started doing that to me until the first time I did a 101% speedrun. That was the first time the game ever crashed on me. Other people have had problems, both casually and speedrunning this. And it's like, my game didn't actually care to do it until I'm like 40 minutes into the longest category. I wasn't too happy about that. Oh, alright, we can start the timer in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Looks like another win for the Crystal Gems.
Like I mentioned, the game does autosave every time you exit or leave an area, so luckily having a soft lock like that is just some time loss that you have. You won't like actually lose progress. Anyway, there we go. So this is really the only out of bounds set in all bosses is useful to the speedrun. It would be great if we found a way to get Connie out here, since Steven is the slowest person that could be in your party. So if you recall from the last area, there was a small cutscene where that spaceship appeared, and there's another one here in Mount Manic. However, going out of bounds, you get to skip that cutscene. It also is just a little bit faster to maneuver this way, and very, very conveniently, where you get to go back in bounds without a problem is right where the Light Steven is. Almost makes you wonder if someone put in here intentionally. So we pop down here with Connie. We're going to grab that Light Steven. That's going to level her up. We're going to get a call from Peridot again. And now, since she has leveled up, we're going to go ahead and toss a level up charm onto Connie. Now, with this level up, she's going to get her study ability, which is pretty important for the speedrun. Every time she studies, she gets an additional buff to her attack. And they can stack. So that may give you an idea of how we can exploit that in order to end these boss fights quickly. Now, Too Cold Cave is short, but there are two kind of annoying enemies I want to get by. First things first, we're going to buy a star fruit here from Onion. This wizard, I need to be in one of the like 2 or 3 locations like that, where I'm able to get by him and that big damaging aura isn't going to hit me. Another Light Steven conveniently placed there. That's not the hard enemy to avoid, it's these two at the end. We got both a snowball and a wizard, so I need 2 enemies to be placed into positions that would allow me to sneak by them. This is not going to work, so we're going to do that, get them to move a little bit. That one was maybe going to hit me, I didn't want to risk it. There we go. So I'm able to lock the snowball up there by switching between party members, which is something that was somewhat recently discovered. Before, we just kind of like went for it and prayed to the RNG gods. But now we're able to get through that consistently, which is awesome. So it's really more of a matter of time loss, like small bit of time loss, as opposed to getting into a fight and just like having to lose about a minute there. So here's a door. I don't like doors though, so I'm just going to come up here, come through the wall, grab the key. That is something that a runner named Polar Bear Swag discovered. He's another runner, plays this game quite a lot alongside me. Now, to get the blue key that you would need to get through there the way intended, I would have had to have gone up on that upper path there, and I would have to get into a fight with a couple of snowballs. And that overall loses about 2 minutes. Or I should say that that clip there saves us about 2 minutes in all bosses. It is also slightly faster in the longer categories, but the time save is not as significant as in all bosses. And at this point, any percent doesn't even come to the Great North. But it is fantastic for all bosses. There is also a little out of bounds trick that you can do that would get you through. You'd be able to like jump past the gate, sort of like go out of bounds into the mountain. But that's not faster than simply grabbing the key. Because you have to set it up a little bit with a tree and get out of bounds that way, and it's kind of a pain to get up the tree. The hitboxes are weird, so... And I discovered that one, so I'm like slightly salty that the faster one got discovered before mine. So now mine's just like not useful. This is our pre-boss test here. You can probably tell by the and we're now making our way to the second boss, Squaridot. And so Squaridot is going to be the boss where we're going to use Connie and Garnet's team attack.
Here we are.
Now, before we get into the fight, we're going to level up Connie a little more because she got 2 level ups since we last opened up this menu. So this boss is also fairly consistent.
What are you doing?
As in, she's not really going to kill runs,
Hey, look.
but you can lose about 26 seconds on Squaridot. She has 2 different attacks. One attack, basically, she opens up her turbines on this machine and starts dragging you towards the ice. The other one, she fires an energy ball at you, so we're going to be hoping for good RNG. At the same time, it is kind of a cool attack, so hard to say which I'd rather have for a marathon. So we're going to have Connie do her study. Garnet is going to use her shield breaker. Stopping it there, it fills up your star bar a little bit. And now we're going to see what we get. And we get the good RNG. So if you like Zelda, you may recognize this. You play tennis with a giant spear of energy. And eventually, the boss messes up. It's good for us. She comes down, she's going to insult us. We're going to toss the fire bits onto Connie. And now we do their team attack. Now, the reason why their team attack is broken is because of this part. Every single one of those attacks that Connie does there is based off of her own attack. So, by increasing her attack either through studying, through attack items, through Steven's ukulele, anything that increases her attack is going to increase all of those as well. So, bosses just go down like that, easy squeezy.
Oh man. Yay! Nope.
And we do get to see that attack 2 more times. And now that we've beaten Squaridot, I'm gonna go ahead and grab a couple of the items here. I'm gonna grab another thoughtful gift. I do believe I forgot to mention though, but those thoughtful gifts, you use those out of combat and you increase 2 characters' relationships. which is another really cool thing because it means that we don't have to do random fights in order to build them up.
Getting started.
And now we're heading off to the barn. Now, I do believe a couple of people here know Steven Universe, so we're meeting everyone's favorite character at the barn, Pumpkin. Pumpkin is fantastic. She is a pumpkin that has been brought to life thanks to Steven's powers.
Right, so what are you? What is that?
Very much like a dog, she makes woof sounds, and you can go and talk to her, and makes woof sounds.
Here, Claude!
Now, what happens when a Peridot meets another Peridot?
Claude. Me. A Claude. You're the Claude. Claude! You're the Claudiest Claude I've ever seen Clauding around. Claude! Claude!
Wow.
Hey, Lapis.
They have some very strong words to exchange. Oh yeah, and I guess Peridot and Lapis are here, some people like them. Fortunately, Squaridot is getting a little rowdy, so someone has to poof her. You want to pick either Pearl or Garnet because both of them they poof her instantly. Amethyst kind of has a little whip animation she does beforehand, so she's about 2 seconds slower. Now we get to talk to Connie here, get some experience. Gonna talk to Pumpkin because she's gonna do a little arf arf, give us a little woof. And now we're on our way to the next area, and Peridot has now joined our party. Now, as I mentioned, every character has different movement speeds. Steven happens to be the slowest. I've been using Connie because she was our fastest, but now we have Peridot. And out of all the characters that can join your party, Peridot is fastest. So whenever Peridot is in your party, much like when you have Connie, you'll be using her out in front for the speed. She also jumps and does kind of like a little Yoshi thing, which is adorable. I love it. And her out of combat ability is that little aura appears and can damage enemies, much like Greg's. However, she can move these metal blocks using her metal powers. So for this area of the game, we're in Strawberry Battlefield. Again, no fights that I'm intending to get in. We're just going around and trying to get to the final boss of this area. So what we're doing is we're collecting these things called tungsten, and Peridot is going to use those to make a tracking device so we can find out where the heck Hestonite went off to.
Give me all the loot. Give it to me.
Didn't quite make that jump. But yeah, Peridot is fast. Peridot is the fastest, followed by Connie and Pearl, who are the same exact speed, followed by Amethyst, Garnet, and then Greg, and finally Steven. It was actually kind of interesting. For the longest time, we thought that Steven and Greg were the same speed, but because I timed it and went like a pretty far distance, we actually did learn that Greg is like very, very slightly faster than Steven. Which I'm going to chalk up to Steven having really tiny legs. And perhaps not being as enthusiastic as Peridot.
I'm so proud of us.
So that is the front lines. We had a couple of tungsten to grab, and we also needed either Garnet or Connie to break open that block.
It's a good day for a mission.
Despite Connie being faster than Garnet, it's faster having Garnet just because Connie would have to swing 3 times to break it. Garnet just has to do one punch Garnet. Time-wise, I actually did a timing. It's about half a second faster, but half a second is half a second. Now here's a cool little thing we do with Steven here. Normally you would run across those blocks up there with Peridot to grab that tungsten, but there's like a weird hitbox with the column there, and Steven's double jump can get us there. Steven's double jump is like the speedrunner's holy grail of this game. there's so many cool things you can do, like this. Instead of grabbing that block from the beginning and dragging it down here, Steven can just hop on top of that little rock there and kind of maneuver on top of the other metal block, which is another neat little time save we get thanks to Steven. Steven also helps with some out of bounds in other categories. Now we're going to have Garnet punch this open, going to grab another tungsten, going to run over with Peridot. And now we have a cool little thing with Peridot here. First we're going to grab the last tungsten of this area. And we're going to hop up here. Now you would have to grab a couple of blocks in order to get across this gap here, but this sword here just happens to have a hitbox. You can, I don't know if you want to call it hitbox or collision, not sure what the super technical term is. But we're able to jump on top of that, jump on top of the block that was right there, and get to the next area. Otherwise, you would lose probably about 10 or so seconds having to grab another block. So all in all, those two tricks save about 22 seconds in runs. Now here we're going to use those thoughtful gifts. I have 3, and 3 is what I need to get the 2 of them synced back up. And we're also going to give Connie 1 level up. You don't really have to do those like in order, so I usually just like wait a couple of seconds. I don't know, feels nicer to me. I don't want to grab either of those two, because the first time you grab an item, there's like a little animation where the characters hold it over their heads, and we don't grab any of those in all bosses. So running into either of those two would lose you a little bit of time in this split. Coming up to another little dialogue here, going to give Connie some more kudos. And everyone was kind of running a little bit far behind. So similar to the last area, I'm running over here with Garnet just because it would be a little bit faster. And also, there's a weird bug where if you switch partners while the bullet is in the air like that, you'll actually get into the fight with this cannon, which is not a good time. Definitely something you want to avoid. And I learned that the hard way. So, you know, sometimes you lose a run, but you learn something new about your game. So that is the last tungsten, so we're done with Temple Crater for now. And now we're going up to the next boss, which is also one of the reasons why this game has a bit of a higher time estimate.
Stick together, team.
Because this boss, the RNG for this boss is, I need its weak point to appear in either its stomach or its arm, because Garnet and Connie cannot perform their team attack if it's in the helmet. So RNG is on our side, but that still does mean there's some RNG that can screw us over. Now, hopefully it's going to appear. Alright, it's in the head, stomach. Alright, it's in the arm, which is great. That's one of the good areas. And so we're going to have Connie study 3 times. Going to go over to our attack band here, slap that onto Connie. Garnet is going to do her shield breaker on the weak point over there. And once Connie is done studying, we can perform that team attack again. Thanks to our thoughtful gifts. And so those studies, along with the defense debuff, we take out the Duke of Strawberries in 1 hit. We typically refer to this boss as Mace. And being the memer that I am, my split for this is Mace Windu. It was the first thing to come to mind, and I decided to just roll with it. And everyone's going to get a whole bunch of experience. Connie leveled up twice, which is really nice. If Connie doesn't get 2 level ups, experience can be a little finicky here. It's not the same amount every single time for every single fight, and we're not sure what exactly causes the variance, or if it's just like completely random. But if she doesn't get 2 level ups here, I have to grab a Light Steven later on in the run, which is just like a couple of seconds of a time loss, so it's not like terrible. You don't have to like fuss and reset. It's just like something you have to remember. And now we found out that Hess Knight is over in Ancient Sky Arena. So that's where we are. I'm gonna grab this level up charm here. And continue on. For all bosses, we don't do anything else here. There's Light Steven and there's 2 chests. But for all bosses, we just want to go and activate the cutscene with Hess Knight and move on to the next area of the game. And yeah, as I mentioned before, I love Peridot's little jump. And as long as characters don't have any sort of speed boost on them, either through items or there's a badge that increases your speed, jumping doesn't actually lose you any time. They still move the same speed.
No!
The only time it would lose speed is when you're about to go into a cutscene, because your character has to be on the ground for it to actually start playing. Otherwise, you are free to just hold on to a character and keep on jumping. So after following Hess Knight to the Ancient Sky Arena, we have learned that Hess Knight is now somewhere in the crater, as you can see by that exclamation point. Which also, if you saw, there is one over Beach City, which, like I said, because we did the Forge skip earlier, that quest flag is still up for Lion to send us to Hess Knight's warship. So we are back at the crater. I'm going to head on over here and... Hey, look at that. There's a giant sunken pyramid that wasn't here before. So, of course, we're going to have to hop right into it and see what is in here.
Yep.
Now, I'm not just doing this for fun, but jumping sort of against this wall is a little faster than just running regularly.
Yes.
And we can name this area too. I feel like calling it the spooky basement today. So we're heading off into the spooky basement. Might find something creepy down here. Basements seriously are creepy though. I remember as a kid, the house I grew up in, we had a furnace, and like the way that the furnace's opening, where like the fire was, like just the way that it was designed made it kind of look like a face. So it was always creepy around winter time when it was on and you went to the basement, and it just kind of like looked like the furnace was sort of looking back at you. So one of the hardest parts of the run, you have to run. And I like to jump off here.
Claude!
Ah, there we go, she said Claude.
Oh, here to
The prism doesn't...
you.
It doesn't waste any time, it doesn't save any time, but you might get to hear Peridot say Claude one more time. So I feel like it's worth it. Although sometimes she'll just say like, hey, or ouch.
Ah.
It's not quite up there like Claude,
Yes.
unfortunately. So Pearl, being the strongest of the crystal gems, is the only one that can actually stand toe-to-toe to her. Pearl's my favorite, if you couldn't tell. And then Hess Knight, I feel like they reenact that scene from Friday where someone gets knocked out and the person is like standing over them and it's like, you got knocked the redacted out. redacted. It's a kid's show, so, you know, it'll get bleeped out. That's kind of my headcanon for how Steven gets knocked unconscious there. And there we go. I managed to use that menu glitch and navigate Connie. So we got to basically skip that loading zone, get into this area. So now everyone has been separated. So Connie and Peridot are on the same team, and the other folks are all on another team as well. So I switched over to Connie there because that'll be faster than just having Peridot run back. The cheeseburger backpack happens to be with us. I imagine the game designers did that because it would just be just because you only get 2 people for this part, so they probably figured for balancing purposes and it makes sense. I can attack with Connie's sword there, and you just kind of go through the wall. I have no clue why that works, but it works, so you don't question it. And now these enemies are a pain, but some characters can simply run at a diagonal and avoid getting hit by them, like I just did there. Peridot, Greg, and Pearl are the characters that can just move at a diagonal and they won't get hit, which is really useful for the next area. And so I jump off there because if you don't take damage before entering those like teleportation things, Peridot and Connie just kind of like hover in the air for about 8 seconds. No clue why. And if you take some damage, they don't. They just instantly go through it. Now, as cool as that was, this one is definitely a lot cooler. Hey, Connie. So, these portals have really big hitboxes, and Peridot happens to have enough speed that instead of solving that puzzle as you normally would be intended to, you can just kind of hold your control stick in the direction of where the next portal is, and you get through it. And now here is the second key. We need both of these keys in order to get through this door that's up here. So 101% would go into the other rooms. There's extra goodies to go get that way, but nothing we need in this speedrun for all bosses. And that there is Peridot and Connie. So now we're on the other team, where we got Pearl, Amethyst, and Greg. We also have Ruby. Sapphire. If you didn't know, Garnet is a permafusion between Ruby and Sapphire, so they got split since Garnet got poofed. And so Sapphire was with the other two, and Ruby is with us. Now, coming up here is something called the Pearl Skip. We used to do the fight coming up here, but I found a way to skip doing that fight, which is kind of an odd thing. You'll see, it's like a little weird to explain. But basically, we kind of abuse an area that doesn't have a hitbox for the enemy, and in the cutscene coming up, it means we don't get stabbed by the enemy while the gate is opening. So this is a pretty gnarly trick, so I'm gonna have to take a moment here. Okay, so we got Greg behind there. Alright, need to get that enemy to stab. Come on. And sometimes the enemy just doesn't want to cooperate, and it takes a while to attack. Alright, so by having Greg stand behind there, and having Pearl throw her spear and switching back to Greg before it hits the box, the game thinks that you're Greg. So, or that you're controlling Greg during the cutscene, and since that's out of range of that enemy's aggro, you'll be safe during the cutscene and you won't actually get hit. And here, sometimes if you switch back, the enemy, your guys will start running through the gate, so that's why I did that there. But yeah, it's kind of ironic in a way that I discovered that, because Pearl's my favorite gem, and in all bosses, that would be the only fight you use her in. So it's like, I found a way to save a lot of time in the run at the cost of less Pearl time. Also, you just had to be moving at an upwards diagonal here. Like, I could sit here for 2 minutes and these enemies are never going to hit me. And when we discovered that, it was really cool. We were really happy. We were also really annoyed that the consistent way to avoid those enemies is, like, incredibly easy to perform. Before, we would be like jumping and switching characters before you get stabbed, and it was just like a whole mess. Now it's like, oh, they're about to stab me, I'm just going to diagonal. Oh, they didn't try to stab me. They were supposed to try to stab me, so it would look cool because I was talking about it. And that is the Pearl Skip. And the split, I like to refer to this one as Team Pearl. And so this entire time, Steven has been off in his different plane of consciousness. So now we're going to control Steven. This is what I suppose people may refer to as an auto-scroller. I'm basically just running towards these beams of light. They pop open and it's a scroll, and it's a little bit of lore dump on you for what happened in the history of Earth. Like, there's Hessenite and with yellow diamond.
Wow.
And Hessenite's being given the prism. And when you're playing through this game, it's like, wow, cool. We're learning more about Hessenite, and we're learning more about Rose's rebellion. And in speedrun, you're like, damn, we're losing 2 minutes to what's essentially a cutscene. And we tried to find ways to get around this, like saving and quitting. Maybe that would bring us to the next area. I even found a way to, like, sort of skip out of the Team Pearl area to get to the next area, and that still activates the cutscene. I found a way to go to the next area, exit it without reuniting the parties and coming back in, and it brought me back to this cutscene. The developers really wanted you to see the cutscene here. There's all sorts of other things they didn't think about, like what allowed me to do the Pearl Skip, or clipping to get that key earlier. But this cutscene was really important. I want to make sure there's no way for you to be able to skip it. So now back here, we got Connie, Pearl, and Steven. And right up here is a light Steven. So if Connie did not level up after that last boss fight, if she did not get 2 level ups, then I would be grabbing that light Steven with Connie here. And we can switch characters here to get Peridot to hop on down. And Ruby and Sapphire reunited. But we're in a speedrun, so they're not going to do any cool fusion dance.
Hey, hey.
Which is not a terribly important thing for the speedrun, so I didn't mention it. But I am playing on fast graphics. the console versions can't do it. The PC version can, and it actually does make loading zones faster playing on fast as opposed to having good graphics. And it also makes some of the cutscenes go by a little quicker. Like, it's still a bit of RNG, but sometimes when Sapphire and Ruby reform there, they'll bump into each other and they'll glow like they do in the show when they're actually fusing. And so that takes like a couple of extra seconds, as opposed to there where you saw it just happen instantly. Now, this is a skip that we call the depth skip. So, again, kind of like the Forge skip that I performed earlier, the way that this game works, it only cares if I exit the end of that room that I was just in through that northern entrance. It doesn't actually care if I go through it the intended way. Now, interestingly enough, doing this right here, warping to the descent, and then running all the way across, and then running back, and we're going to fight the boss where we saw Hessonite, that's actually about the same speed as going through the depths the intended way. The time difference, though, is that for this next boss fight, Connie has to study 5 times, and when I use my level up charm on Greg, he's going to get an ability called Star Jam, because he's been getting new abilities too. He now has a healing aura at this current level, because all the characters get like bumped up a few levels once you get to the pyramid here. So he has a healing aura, not useful in speedruns, but the Star Jam increases the rate that your star bar fills at. And in addition to that, one of his abilities he gets when he levels up, because we're about to do a whole bunch of level ups on people, because now it's going to be necessary. One of the things that he gets is that whenever characters are doing a charge up ability, it goes by a lot quicker. And Connie's studying ability happens to be one of those. It's probably most useful with Peridot in a casual playthrough, because a lot of what Peridot does is build like little cannons and machines. She's basically like a support character, and all of those take time to charge up, so Greg speeds that up. It also speeds up Steven's ukulele when he plays it, which is also something we do in this fight. So now that we're here, we're going to use our level up charms. So Connie is going to get 1. That is going to give her Sword Storm. That's what we need for this fight coming up. Greg gets his level up, which is going to give him Star Jam. And I'm also going to use this one here on Garnet. And Garnet is going to get Taunt. So now we do our level ups. Level up Steven's teamwork there. He gets a upgrade that decreases the cooldown of the backpack. Connie, attack and luck. She's our damage dealer, so you know, should have been expecting that. Garnet, you give her some there in teamwork because she gets something called leadership, increases everyone's defense, and also you just bump up her defense and throw the X1 into attack, because why not? Greg gets 1 defense and everything else gets tossed into teamwork. So his jams are faster, and there is the Star Charge. That's the ability that I just explained. And also this badge that we got earlier, we're going to toss onto Garnet. Doesn't matter who gets it because it affects the entire party. It's just you'd have to go over 1 additional time to put it on Greg. And now we're moving on to Light Warrior. Now, Light Warrior isn't too scary of a boss. And it's also the first time that we don't use a team attack against a boss. Connie's going to be doing all the damage herself with that new Sword Storm ability. So all the colors here correspond to different attacks. That is really nice. Green means it's going to try to heal itself, which is like basically the best RNG. Blue would also be nice. Blue, it's going to fire an energy ball at me. Oh, colorless. That's not good.
Gem powers activate. Now we're bubble buddies.
So that means it's going to do an AoE attack that hits everyone, which sucks. But it's really only crucial that Steven and that Greg and Connie are covered for this, so it doesn't interrupt their attacks. And there we go, blue. And now Steven's going to play his ukulele. And I will see if we, alright, we don't have to just go sit through that. So, 5 studies, Steven playing his ukulele, and Garnet with her defense debuff allows us to one-shot the Light Warrior.
Oh no! Huh?
And we're slowly reaching the end here. And you can move during this cutscene. You can like kind of manipulate yourself.
Let's go.
Try to get closer to the chest. We only have to open up this one here. The other one has a badge. We don't need it for all bosses, however. And we're gonna grab everything.
Got just the thing.
So,
One thing
we only need 2 gifts. After we defeated the other boss,
got just do your thing. How about
Connie and Garnet kind of like gave each other a little thumbs up.
do the trick?
And that was enough that you only need 2 gifts. So yeah, normally you would be heading over to Bismuth's Forge now. That is the next part of the quest line. But as I said, since we went ahead and did that forge skip earlier, this entire time Lion has been activated to take us to Hess Knight's Worship. So that is the final part of the
Here
game.
we are.
And we're now back at Beach City. Now, we won't actually get to see anyone because we're just going up to the hill here. I guess you can kind of see Meridu in the background. You catch a small glimpse of Lars. There are other characters around, like Jenny is in Beach City, but we don't go over to the area where she is. Vidalia as well. And here is Lion. So yeah, we're going to ask Lion to open up this portal.
Weird. Just getting
It's a little bit faster to pick that option, because otherwise, if you pick going immediately, it won't actually load the zone until everyone has gone through the portal. And characters can be kind of finicky. So, yeah. I don't need this Light Steven, but let's go ahead and save him. I also just love Stevens because he, like, gives it a hug. It's pretty cute. And we can open up the menu there to move during that cutscene, get through the door a little bit quicker.
Hess.
And there is Hessenite.
The day we event. What? Why?
Tonight,
Don't you? You're at. Well, how isn't that?
So first up, we're going to have to fight the Prism. The Prism is like the Light Warrior, except tougher. Deals more damage, it has more health, it has 3 distinct phases that damage doesn't bleed over, so you can't actually one-shot this boss. And hopefully we'll get good. Oh, cool. There's like a glitch here where it won't actually pick a color, and so you can go ahead and like do other stuff. So that's like really lucky to get actually.
Ready?
Now once I hit it though, it's going to select something. Red. Red means that they fire bombs into the air and they land at random places. So that can either be good or bad. Because it really just depends. They can all miss you, or they could be falling on top of everyone. Ooh, and blue. Blue means we're going to play some tennis here. It's probably going to go after Connie. Yeah. Now, especially as it starts to lose health, it's a lot tougher than Squaradox. And sometimes it'll go for Steven, and like you basically have to press the A button almost immediately. And I have lost runs to that because it's just like incredibly fast. Almost like to a ridiculous extent. And now we're going to use another Star Fruit, have Connie do her Sword Storm again. We did get one lucky, it doesn't look like it was enough, unfortunately. However, we should get our star bar filled up again before the prism attacks. Oh, and we got blue. Ooh, okay. I just don't want them to be damaged into going into the next fight. Oh, and we got Garnet, sadly. That's alright, we'll heal Garnet up. And there we go, attacking Connie once again. That might actually be enough there. Oh no, it wasn't. And that is all for the prism. And then you have to pick the two options on the left to go to the next phase. Here you pick the rightmost option. There's also a weird glitch with the sound here. You have to like pause the menu to bring it back down. And now we're going to hear Hessenite's theme. Hessenite's theme with Greg's guitar is probably my favorite track in this entire game. It sounds pretty epic with the ukulele too. But you kind of hold off on a little bit for that. Now we're going to have Garnet over here taunt. And Ash, he's being annoying. So what I need her to do is to attack the Light Warrior, because if Steven heals the Light Warrior, it puts a massive debuff onto Hessenite. And it's like the most ideal thing you can have happen. Alright, we don't want that taunt running out. She can still attack the Light Warrior even when she's taunted like that. But yeah, she is unfortunately giving me some problems. We'll go ahead and bubble Greg there. Oh, Connie's down. That is alright, that's why I brought along a Rose's Tear.
Next time I'll get it right. Now we're bubble buddies. That's what I needed.
Particularly with any percent, she's a big run killer. And unfortunately, I'm not set up, so she's being a troll and attacking Light Warrior. When I do not need her attacking Light Warrior just yet. And now we're going to use one of our Together Forever breakfasts, get everyone's health back up. Now, if we're lucky, she's going to go and attack Light Warrior again. Nope, she's going for Steven. And we may not get to see the Light Warrior debuff. I might just have to bring Connie up. With only Garnet's debuff, Connie's gonna need like something like, I want to say 12 studies.
Bring it.
And we'll toss on one of these. See, now would be a perfect time for her to... Nope, she wants to do that again. Yeah, Hestonite being super uncool right now. Just go attack the Light Warrior. You know you want to. Oh, that is odd. I don't know why she attacked Connie when she was taunted. Sometimes Hestonite can bug out as well, which may be what was happening. Alright, and that will probably be enough, so...
Ready?
We'll have to have Steven play his ukulele. Garnet's gonna get her defense debuff. And we're gonna do the team attack. Yeah, that'll be enough. And time is right now in this big white screen. But yeah, for all bosses, optimally, Connie only has to study 2 times. You get the Light Warrior debuff, you get Garnet's debuff, and Steven is playing a ukulele. And that will be enough for you to one-shot Hestonite. My gold split on all bosses, the Hestonite fight is like less than a minute. So this run is marathon safe. You can do it in a marathon, but between Mace and Hestonite RNG, that's like the most annoying parts.